Today I want to talk about something that initially sounds a bit morbid, which is what happens when you die. But in the context of dying within a simulated universe, it's actually not that bad and can even be a positive thing. So on one hand, I have to be a bit careful because people's beliefs around what happens when you pass away can largely be based on their religion. But there's actually a lot of similarities around beliefs of what happens when you die in religions and the simulated universe. They're many times different ways of explaining the same thing. So first of all, let's think about what happens when you die in a computer game. So I often like to draw parallels with computer games because there are so many kind of stark similarities. It's kind of hard not to make a comparison. So let's take a game, for example, and it doesn't matter if you're not into computer games or you don't play computer games, but let's take a game like Tomb Raider, which most people have probably heard of or may even seen the film based on the game. And effectively in Tomb Raider you play the character of somebody called Lara Croft, who's a sort of a trepid explorer, and there are times in the games where you're kind of infiltrating in these deep kind of hidden tombs. You're having to run away or fight against bloodthirsty wolves. You're jumping over these huge chasms, which you would certainly kind of meet your maker if you if you didn't make it. Now, the funny thing is, when you're playing a computer game, there are many times that you have to take certain risks. For example, taking on vicious animals, or doing death-defying stunts, or climbing up sheer cliff faces without any rope, and so on and so forth. And that's what makes the game exciting, right? The fact that if it was too easy, it wouldn't be fun, because you'll just be sort of wandering through the game. There's no real peril or anything like that. There's no consequences. But the interesting thing about that is, if in real life you knew that there weren't real consequences in the sense that we normally think about it, if something went wrong, so it could be a business venture that you want to do but you're worried about what happens if it doesn't work or doesn't take off, or maybe you're worrying about changing jobs, maybe you're worrying about going out with somebody, starting a new relationship based on past experiences, and so on and so forth. But if you were doing that in a computer game, of course you would be much more likely to take those risks, because what would be the worst that can happen? Now, when you die in a computer game, you don't really die per se. What simply happens is, it might be annoying initially because you might have to go and start back at the beginning of the level again, but you don't really die in the true sense of the word. It's not like, imagine you pay £60 or $80 for a computer game and you have one life, and if you die, that you would never be able to play that game ever again unless you go and buy another copy of it. That would be pretty annoying, right? So what happens in a game, of course, is you die, quote unquote, but then you start the level again. Now, in a game such as one of these games, like a multiplayer online game where you're playing with other kind of real people in that world, so like online versions of Grand Theft Auto, there's games like World of Warcraft, and so on and so forth. When you die in that game, again, you rather than going all the way back to the beginning again, you do what's called respawning. So although in some respects that character, that version of that character dies, you simply pop up somewhere else in the world as effectively that same character. Now, when you think about it, isn't that the same as reincarnation? So going back to what I was talking about earlier with different religions, you've got Hinduism, you've got certain sects of Buddhism that believe in reincarnation. Well, isn't that the same thing? You're kind of respawning. Now, the issue with reincarnation, because you might think, well, why not just come back as the same person like you do in a computer game? But the problem with that is, we're on this planet, on this simulated world. It would be really weird for a start if you died and then you just kind of respawned. I mean, it'd be very strange. I mean, would you respawn as a baby, as the same person, or would you come back as, you know, you were in your prime, maybe in your 20s or 30s? The problem with that is, you know, there's only so many people on the planet. If you just kept respawning as the same person, you know, soon there's just not going to be enough. When you think of the amount of people who have died over the centuries, you effectively have to wait for someone else to die and then someone to be born again. But what my main point is, if you don't really die and you just come back as another character, there's nothing really to worry about, because a lot of people, they worry a lot about death, like it's this absolute kind of final thing. And also this can help you with focus on what your life goals are, because one thing that we do know for sure is when you pass away, your body stays behind, right? And people either they bury it, or more commonly these days it will be cremated. So that's the one thing we know for sure, is your physical body dies, because again, there wouldn't be enough room if everybody physically, you know, came back as the same body, as the same person. But one thing that you can't guarantee but has much more likeliness is your spirit. Your spirit lives on. So your spirit is, you know, your vibration, your energy, which is proven by physics. I think it's Newton's law. I really should look this up. But, you know, that energy can't be destroyed. It can only be sort of transformed to another medium. So this is basically karma. And going back to computer games, this is the way that you can level up, because many religions will believe when you die, you will then get reincarnated as a new character, if you like, but you will go up a level or down a level based on what you did on your current life. So karma can be increased by many different ways. It can be, the obvious one is doing good for yourself, doing good for other people. And one thing that can really increase your karma is learning new skills. And again, if you think about it, if we're in a simulation and people have created the simulation, they want to see what these characters do, what they're capable of. It's like playing a game of Sims. You know, normally when people play a game of Sims, they want their characters to level up. Maybe they want them to get a job. Maybe they want them to learn new skills like cooking or crafting. Maybe they want to get married or have children, etc. And this is exactly the same as what we are effectively doing in the simulation. Things that you do, things that you learn, although you can't take them to your next character when you're quote unquote reincarnated, but it increases your karma and it allows you to respawn as a more advanced and better character. Now obviously the opposite of that is the case. If you do really bad things, then effectively you're punished, because you're creating bad karma, and that karma is taken with you into the next lifetime. But the main point of this is, don't worry about dying like this kind of final thing. In the simulated universe, you will come back as a new character with a higher level, providing that you focus on doing good things, on developing yourself, and effectively becoming a better human. So I hope that's comforting to you, for anybody that does worry about things like dying and stuff like that. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like. I really appreciate it, and do subscribe as well if you haven't already, if you like this content, especially things around the simulated universe theory. So thanks for watching, take care, I'll speak to you soon.